I knew something was wrong the moment I heard my daughter's faint gasp echo through the baby monitor. It wasn't the usual struggling breath she sometimes had on bad nights. This one sounded different, sharper, desperate, like someone was choking the last bit of air out of her. I sprinted toward her room and froze. Her oxygen tank's valve was twisted shut, completely turned off. My heart slammed against my ribs as I dropped to my knees, opening it with trembling hands. As the hiss of air returned, my daughter's chest began to rise again. But then I saw it, our security camera blinking red, recording everything. I checked the feed and my blood ran cold. Standing in the hallway, wearing her royal blue HOA uniform with that smug, entitled smile, was HOA Karen. She had turned off my disabled daughter's oxygen supply, and she thought she'd get away with it. She had no idea who she had just crossed. Before I continue this story, I want to ask you something. Which city are you watching from right now? Drop your city name in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear is one of the most unbelievable things a parent can ever experience. All right, let's start. When you're the parent of a disabled child, your heart beats differently. Every sound, every breath, every tiny movement from your child becomes your universe. My daughter Emily is 10 years old, born with a rare respiratory condition. She needs a constant oxygen supply to keep her lungs working. And despite her challenges, she has the brightest smile in the entire neighborhood. A smile that melts strangers, softens rough days, and reminds me why I fight so hard. But not everyone sees her like that. Some see her oxygen tank as noise. Some see her wheelchair as an eyesore. Some see her gentle breathing machine as a disturbance. And the worst of them all? HOA Karen, the woman who polices grass length with more passion than she's ever shown to another human being. The woman who bangs on doors at 6 a.m. to complain about kids existing too loudly. The woman who believes rules were created for her to weaponize. She always had a problem with us living in the neighborhood, but I never, not even in my darkest imagination, thought she would go this far. Turning off my disabled daughter's oxygen tank wasn't just cruelty, it was attempted murder. And what she didn't know was that I wasn't just some quiet dad who would let things slide. I had a past, I had training, and I had proof. And now, I was coming for justice. I didn't breathe for a full 5 seconds as I stared at the grainy security camera footage on my phone. My hands were trembling so violently the screen almost slipped out of them. There she was, HOA Karen, standing outside my daughter's bedroom door, her face angled toward the oxygen tank like she was analyzing it for violations instead of realizing a child's life depended on it. She reached forward, her fingers curling around the valve, twisting it shut. Not by accident, not from curiosity, not out of confusion. She did it with purpose, with arrogance, with that cold, tight-lipped smirk that always meant she was about to do something unforgivable. And while my daughter was inside the room, helpless, attached to tubes keeping her lungs open, that moment broke something inside me. But before anger, before vengeance, before anything else, I lunged to Emily's bedside. Her eyes were barely open, her breaths shallow and spaced. I turned the valve back on, whispering over and over, "You're okay, sweetheart. Breathe. Daddy's here. You're okay." Her little fingers curled weakly around mine. That grip alone kept me from collapsing. When her breathing finally steadied and I kissed her forehead, I made a silent promise. This would never happen again. Not while I was alive. Not while I had breath in my own lungs. I stepped out of the room, closing the door gently behind me, and all the fear in my chest began crystallizing into something sharper, something dangerous rage. Not the kind of rage that comes from anger, the kind that comes from love, the kind that comes when someone threatens your child. I walked into the hallway, replaying the footage again and again, looking for any sign that this was misunderstanding or accident. But no, it was intentional. She looked right at the tank, right at the valve, and twisted it off like she was turning off a light switch. She even wiped her hand on her pants afterward, as if touching something that kept a disabled child alive somehow disgusted her. Karen had always hated us living here. She hated the ramp I added to the front porch. She hated the sound of the oxygen machine hum at night. She hated the wheelchair lift on the back of our SUV. She hated the disabled parking permit. Every time she filed a complaint with the HOA office, they emailed us nervously, aware of who she was but unwilling to confront her directly. She says the ramp ruins the uniformity of home exteriors. She says the oxygen tank hoses are a tripping hazard. She says your daughter's medical equipment violates the HOA safety guidelines. Every complaint more absurd than the last. But today, she crossed a line that didn't exist on any HOA rulebook. She crossed into my world where there were consequences, where justice wasn't a polite process of emails and meetings, where men like me didn't need courtrooms to make things right. What Karen didn't know, what she couldn't even imagine, was that long before I became a quiet father raising a disabled girl alone after losing my wife, I served 10 years in a special emergency tactical division, trained to stay calm under pressure, spot threats, and eliminate them with precision. And now that training was awake again. I walked to the living room, my mind moving through steps like a soldier preparing for an operation. First, secure Emily. Second, secure the evidence. Third, confront the threat. But as I reached for my phone, ready to copy the footage to an external drive, my doorbell rang. Not once, not twice, but 3 harsh, rapid, impatient bangs. Karen's knock. Of course. I took a deep breath, not to calm down, but to calculate. Anger leads to mistakes. Precision leads to justice. When I opened the door, she stood there with her arms crossed over her HOA-issued clipboard, tapping her pen like a metronome of annoyance. "Good evening," she said in that sharp nasal tone. "We need to discuss multiple violations happening in your home." My jaw tightened. "Is that so?" "Yes," she snapped. "Noise past 9 p.m., unauthorized medical machinery visible from a window, and a hazardous tank connected to my daughter's life support system." I finished, my voice low and dangerous. Karen sighed, dramatically, like I was the one inconveniencing her. "Well, we all have rules to follow. You can't just—" I stepped out onto the porch, closing the door behind me so she wouldn't see the trembling fear still in my daughter's breathing. "Karen," I said, "I have something you need to see." "Oh, I don't have time for—" I pressed my phone screen. The video began to play, the exact clip of her twisting the oxygen valve shut. Her face turned white, then red, then strangely calm again. "That's fake," she said instantly. "You edited that." I stared at her, unblinking. Our security camera uploads to a cloud drive, with timestamps, and audio, and motion tracking. For the first time since moving into this neighborhood, Karen's confidence cracked. She swallowed, her throat bobbing once. "You can't prove intent," she muttered, stepping back. "I was checking safety. The tank was loud, that's all. You almost killed her. It's not my fault, your kid." I stepped forward. Her words died in her throat. "You come near my daughter again," I said, my voice dropping to the tone I used in interrogation rooms, "and you won't need the HOA. You'll need a lawyer." She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. Instead, she spun around sharply and power-walked back toward her house, clutching her clipboard like a shield. But she wasn't retreating. I could tell by the stiffness in her stride. She was planning something. Karen wasn't done, and neither was I, because if she wanted a war, a legal, strategic, unstoppable war, she had picked the wrong father. She had no idea the storm she had just unleashed. The morning after the incident felt unnervingly calm, the kind of calm that isn't peace, but warning. The kind of quiet the air carries before a tornado rips through a neighborhood. I didn't sleep. I stayed awake beside Emily's bed, watching her breathe, making sure the oxygen tank remained steady, making sure no shadow appeared near her doorway. Every few minutes, I checked the security camera feed again, replaying the footage of Karen turning the valve off just to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. It was real. She did it. And she'd do it again if she wanted to prove a point. By sunrise, I made Emily breakfast, helped her brush her hair, and set up her breathing exercises. I tried to keep my voice light, calm, reassuring. She didn't know what happened last night. She didn't know someone tried to harm her. And I wasn't planning to tell her. Kids like her already carry enough weight. But while making her laugh with silly pancake shapes, I saw movement outside the kitchen window. Karen, standing at the edge of her driveway, staring directly into her home. Not watching the street, not checking her mail, not doing yard work, just staring, cold, calculating, like she wanted me to know she wasn't afraid. I stepped into view deliberately, staring right back. She didn't flinch. Instead, she lifted her phone, tapped something on her screen, and typed with a smug smile spreading across her face. I knew that look. She was escalating. 30 minutes later, my email pinged. HOA compliance notice. Urgent action required. Multiple violations issued. Of course. I opened the message and scanned the list. 1. Unauthorized medical equipment visible from the window. 2. Exterior ramp not approved by architectural committee. 3. Vehicle modification wheelchair lift without permit. 4. Noise disturbance oxygen machine. 5. Unsafe storage of hazardous material oxygen tank. 6. Failure to maintain neighborhood aesthetic standards. Each violation came with a potential fine. And Karen made sure every one of them was time-stamped for the night. She turned off the oxygen tank. She attacked us before. Now she was attacking us on paper. I took a slow breath. Evidence, timeline, motives, threat assessment. My brain reverted to tactical training. Automatically, Karen thought these fines would scare me, force me to comply, humiliate me, drive us out of a neighborhood. She didn't realize she stepped onto a battlefield where I was trained to demolish people, like her, without lifting a fist. I printed the email, collected the footage, and prepared a folder. Before I could even put on my jacket, another knock echoed through the front door. Not sharp like Karen's. This one was softer, hesitant. When I opened the door, there stood my neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, a kind woman in her late 60s who always brought cookies to Emily and checked on us during storms. She looked worried. I heard shouting last night. Is everything okay? Karen must have been talking. She spread rumors faster than wildfire. I'm fine, I said gently. Emily is fine. Thank you. I saw Karen outside this morning, Mrs. Rodriguez whispered, glancing nervously toward Karen's house. She was taking pictures of your ramp, and she told Mr. Benson she's filing a case with the HOA to force you to remove it. I clenched my jaw. Removing the ramp meant Emily couldn't enter or exit the house safely. That wasn't just harassment anymore. That was endangerment. Thank you for telling me, I said. Before she walked away, she touched my arm lightly. Be careful. Karen's dangerous when she thinks she's winning. I nodded. Winning. That was the word she loved the most. After dropping Emily at her therapy session, I drove straight to the HOA office. A small building with beige walls and dying potted plants out front. Inside, the receptionist glanced up nervously when she saw me, like she had already been warned. Can I help you? She asked. Yes, I said calmly. I need to speak with the HOA president. Now. She swallowed hard. He's in a meeting. I placed the folder on the counter and slid a sheet of paper forward, the printed still image of Karen turning off the oxygen tank. You'll want to cancel that meeting. Her eyes widened. She stood abruptly. Within 2 minutes, the HOA president, Mr. Franklin, appeared, a balding man in his 70s whose entire personality smelled of political correctness and fear of conflict. He cleared his throat. Sir, what seems to be the issue? I opened the folder and spread everything across his desk, the violations email, the screenshots, the timeline, and finally the video. His face lost all its color. My God, he whispered. Yes, I said. Your HOA board member, your enforcer, tried to cut off my disabled daughter's oxygen and nearly killed her. He sat down heavily. This can't be real. It's real, I said coldly. And I want every false violation she filed removed immediately. Of course, he stammered. This is serious. I didn't know she would go this far. We've had complaints before, but nothing like. I leaned forward. If you don't remove her from the board, I will file a police report, contact the district attorney, and take this to the local news. She attempted murder. He wiped his forehead. I understand. Give me until the end of the day. No, I said, you have 1 hour. His face paled further. Yes, 1 hour. I left the HOA building knowing one thing. Karen would soon learn she wasn't untouchable. But Karen didn't play by rules, she played by revenge. When I returned home, she stood on my porch, waiting, her arms crossed, her expression twisted with fury. You think you're smart, she hissed, running to the HOA to complain about me? You tried to kill my daughter, I said. You don't get to play the victim. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a venomous whisper. You're not the only one who knows how to make trouble. You have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with. No, she snapped. No, you don't. I have friends on the city zoning board. I have friends in the HOA appeals committee. I have friends who can shut your entire life down. Then she leaned in so close I could feel her breath. And trust me, I'm not done. Not until you and that child are gone from my neighborhood. My blood turned to ice. Not because I feared her, but because she had just said the one sentence no parent can ever forgive. That child. My daughter wasn't that anything. She was my life. And Karen had just declared war. But what she didn't know, what she would soon learn, was that I didn't lose wars. I ended them. Karen's threat echoed in my mind long after she stormed off my porch, heels clicking like gunshots on the pavement. But I didn't react. I didn't yell. I didn't warn her back. Because I saw something she didn't realize she'd revealed. Fear. For the first time, she wasn't confident. She wasn't smug. She wasn't standing on her imaginary throne of HOA power. She was scared, and scared people make mistakes. But she wasn't scared of me. She was scared of something else. Something bigger. Something she thought I might uncover. And the way she kept glancing over her shoulder, the way she kept checking her phone, the way she said she had friends in zoning and appeals, that wasn't arrogance. That was insurance. Which meant Karen wasn't acting alone. She had a plan, a larger agenda, and threatening my daughter was just one part of it. Later that afternoon, I sat on the couch beside Emily as she watched cartoons, her oxygen tube running safely across the blanket. I stroked her hair, my mind racing. I replayed Karen's words again and again, searching for clues, analyzing every detail like I used to during tactical operations. I have friends on the city zoning board. I have friends who can shut your entire life down. Not until you and that child are gone from my neighborhood. Those weren't empty threats. Those were statements made by someone who believed they had leverage, backup, authority, protection. Someone who believed no one could touch her. But people who think they're invincible always leave trails. And I was going to find hers. That evening, when Emily was asleep and the house was quiet, I stepped outside with a flashlight and checked around the oxygen tank system. Everything was secure. No tampering. No footprints. No shadows. But then my flashlight landed on something faint near the bushes, a small, dark indentation in the dirt. A boot print. Small foot size. Sharp heel. Deep edge. Karen's. She had been standing right outside our home again. Watching. Not surprising. But something glittered beside the footprint. I crouched down and picked it up. A gold HOA badge. The kind board members wore to meetings. Only this one wasn't her usual badge. This one had a star engraved on it. A rank. A title. Karen wasn't just a board member. She was the HOA vice president, and she hid it. Why would someone obsessed with power hide their highest position? Unless she didn't want people questioning her authority. Or worse, didn't want anyone knowing what she was planning. My stomach tightened. This wasn't personal. This wasn't about ramps or noise or oxygen machines. This was a strategic purge. Karen wanted us gone for a reason deeper than her usual petty cruelty. What reason? Why target a disabled child and her single father? unless we stood in the way of something she wanted. The next morning, I asked Emily's therapist, "Can she stay an extra hour today? I need to take care of something urgent." She nodded kindly. "Of course. Go do what you need to." I drove straight to the public records office. If Karen had friends in zoning appeals and city planning, there had to be a paper trail. Land usage, renovation plans, permit requests, neighborhood proposals. I sifted through digital archives, property codes, and committee reports until something jumped out at me. A document stamped with the HOA vice president's approval. Karen's hidden title: Proposal for Neighborhood Redesign. Objective: renovate and modernize the community to increase property value. Obstacles: houses with accessibility modifications decrease aesthetic appeal. There, right there, the sentence that explained everything. Karen wanted the disabled families out, wanted the elderly out, wanted anyone visually disruptive out. She was trying to turn our neighborhood into a luxury district, something shiny enough to attract wealthy buyers and investors. Families like mine? We lowered the appeal. But the most horrifying part was buried in the appendix: a list of houses marked for mandatory compliance enforcement. House number 14. Mine. House number 9. A veteran with a prosthetic leg. House number 22. An elderly wheelchair-bound woman. House number 4. A family with a child who had autism. 4 houses. For vulnerable households. Marked for harassment. Marked for fines. Marked to be driven out. And Karen was spearheading the entire operation. I took photos of every page. This wasn't HOA harassment anymore. This was discrimination. Fraud. Abuse of power. A coordinated campaign to remove disabled individuals from the community. And Karen thought she could hide behind friends and bureaucracy. But she forgot one thing. I was patient. I was strategic. And I had proof. I left the records office with a pounding heart. Not from fear, from determination. But as I stepped outside, the sun glaring in my eyes, a black SUV rolled slowly toward me. The window lowered, revealing Karen sitting inside with someone I'd never seen before, a clean-cut man in a suit, wearing a city zoning badge on his chest. Karen smirked. "So," she called, "doing some reading?" I didn't answer. "You think you're going to scare me with your little documents?" I stayed silent. Tactical silence was more effective than any insult. Her voice sharpened. "You mess with me again, and I promise you, I'll have your house condemned." The man beside her didn't even look at me. He looked straight ahead, jaw clenched, like he wasn't comfortable being part of this but didn't know how to stop her. Karen leaned back smugly. Good luck fighting the government. The SUV drove off. But she revealed something. She wasn't doing this alone. She had someone inside the zoning office helping her manipulate laws. That meant corruption, conspiracy, illegal property targeting. Karen was involved in something big, and now I had the one thing she didn't: a motive. When I returned home and checked the security cameras, my blood ran cold. There, right on my driveway, chalked in bright white lines, was a giant X. Deliberate, threatening, a message. I walked closer, and written underneath in Karen's handwriting were 4 words that lit a fire inside my chest. "You're next. Get out." She wasn't hiding her intentions anymore. She wasn't bluffing. She had declared open war. But she didn't know the truth, a truth she'd regret discovering. I wasn't the one who needed to be afraid. She was. Because I don't get intimidated. I get even. And Karen had no idea how far I'd go to protect my daughter. The white chalk X on my driveway burned into my eyes like a personal attack, but it wasn't the marking itself that tightened my chest. It was the message beneath it. "You're next. Get out." Karen had shed her disguise. No more petty complaints. No more fake violations. No more pretending she was just following HOA rules. This was open intimidation. A declaration. A warning. But warnings only work on people who fear consequences. I didn't. Not anymore. I erased the chalk with a bucket of water, then walked back inside, each step heavier with the weight of everything I'd uncovered. My daughter was watching cartoons again. unaware of how close danger was circling our home. Her tiny laugh drifted into the hallway like sunlight through cracked clouds. She was the reason I hadn't snapped. She was the reason I hadn't broken Karen's peace with my bare hands. She was the reason I was still holding myself back. But holding back didn't mean backing down. As the sun lowered outside, painting the house in a warm orange glow, I stood in the doorway of Emily's room. Her oxygen machine hummed softly next to her. She smiled at me, reaching out with her little hand. "Daddy, can we color later?" "Of course, sweetheart." She trusted me, relied on me, believed I could protect her. And I would, no matter what it cost me. Later that evening, after tucking her into bed, I moved to the living room, turned the lights low, and spread all the evidence across the coffee table. The HOA violations, the redesigned proposal, the zoning signatures, Karen's hidden badge, the footage of her turning off the oxygen. I turned on a lamp, its circle of light resting over the documents like a spotlight. The weight of everything Karen had built, her power, her connections, her willingness to go to any extent, settled into my bones. She wanted families like mine removed because we didn't fit her perfect vision, because our presence lowered her imaginary standards, because she valued aesthetic uniformity more than actual human lives. But she made one fatal mistake. She chose the wrong child to endanger, and the wrong father to provoke. I leaned back on the couch and took a slow breath, letting the old mindset return, the one I buried when I left the Special Response Unit years ago, the mindset of someone who didn't wait for justice, the mindset of someone who created it. My first move wasn't rage. It was preparation. I secured Emily's oxygen system, reinforced her window locks, recalibrated the motion sensors on the exterior cameras. Then I called someone I hadn't spoken to in 8 years. "Jackson," a gruff voice answered after one ring. "You alive, brother?" "No time for jokes," I said quietly. "I need intel on a local zoning official. Fast." There was a pause. "A zoning official?" His tone shifted. "What's going on?" "Someone is targeting my kid." Silence. "Then send me the name." I texted him the photo of the zoning badge I saw in Karen's SUV, with the man's ID number clearly visible. Within minutes, he replied, "Bro, this guy isn't just zoning. He's tied to 3 lawsuits for corruption. 2 whistleblowers went missing. 1 judge called him untouchable. Be careful." My jaw clenched. So Karen wasn't just using HOA power. She had connected herself to someone deeply dangerous, someone who manipulated laws, bullied homeowners, and erased anyone who threatened his operation. But even untouchable people bleed. The next day, I received another HOA email. This one colder than the first. Notice of community vote. Proposal: mandatory removal of non-approved modifications, including ramps, lifts, and exterior medical equipment. Vote scheduled in 3 days. 3 days. That was all the time Karen needed to legally force us out. 3 days before every vulnerable family in the neighborhood faced eviction-level fines. 3 days before she completed her luxury redesign. My heartbeat steadied, not from panic, but from clarity. I needed to expose her. Publicly, legally, tactically. And I would. That afternoon, while Emily napped, I walked to Karen's house. Not to confront her. Not to threaten her, but to observe. Her curtains were drawn. Her car was gone. But the trash bin outside was overflowing, always a gold mine for hidden information. I glanced around. No one was watching. I opened the lid. Inside were torn papers, crumpled envelopes, printed emails, and a manila folder with the HOA seal. I pulled it out carefully, shielding it with a grocery bag I'd brought. Inside were papers labeled Partnership Agreement, Luxury Housing Investment Group, projected profit $3.2 million upon neighborhood modernization. My pulse kicked. So that was her real agenda. This wasn't just about me, or my daughter, or disability aesthetics. She was preparing the neighborhood for a luxury sale, flipping properties for profit. Families like mine stood in the way. But the next page was even more shocking. Phase 1, Remove targeted homes. Phase 2. Condemn lots for redevelopment. Phase 3. Demolish existing structures. Condemn. That's why she threatened to condemn my home yesterday. She wasn't bluffing. She was planning it. At the bottom of the page was a signature line. Karen's and the zoning officials. This was a criminal conspiracy. I put every document back inside the grocery bag, sealed it, and headed home quickly. I had what I needed now. Proof of criminal intent. Proof of discrimination. Proof of corruption. Karen had built her empire on fear. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. When I arrived home, I found something waiting on my porch, something that made everything inside me freeze. A single sheet of paper, folded in half. No envelope. I picked it up and opened it. Inside, in uneven handwriting, were 4 words. Stop digging or else. Below it was a printed photo. A photo of me, standing at the public records office, looking at Karen's redesigned neighborhood proposal. They were watching me, following me, tracking me. This wasn't about fines or rules anymore. This was war, and they were willing to escalate. But they didn't know my next move. They didn't know I'd already predicted theirs. They didn't know what I was preparing. I folded the paper slowly, walked inside, and locked the door behind me. Because if Karen wanted a war, she was about to experience the kind of war she could never survive. The moment I placed that threatening note on the kitchen counter, something inside me shifted. It wasn't fear. Fear is sharp, breathless, chaotic. This was the opposite. This was cold, controlled, focused, the kind of mindset I hadn't allowed myself to slip back into in years. The kind of mindset that got men like me through dark missions in foreign countries, but also the same mindset that made me leave that world behind to protect my daughter from ever knowing how dangerous her father once was. But Karen had rewritten rules. She didn't just want us gone, she wanted us erased. 3 days until the HOA vote. 3 days until her illegal partnerships became official. 3 days until she had the legal power to ruin every vulnerable family in the neighborhood. I didn't have 3 days. I needed to destroy her operation now, and the best way to destroy a tyrant is to expose them in front of every person they believe they control. My first step was to gather every piece of evidence I'd collected and organize it into a digital file. I backed it up on 3 drives, set cloud uploads, and stored physical copies in places Karen could never find. Once I had everything secured, I called someone I'd been avoiding for years, someone who once trusted me with her biggest exposés. "Hello," a calm voice answered. "Rachel," I said quietly. A pause, then a soft sigh. "Jackson, I haven't heard from you since." "I know," I cut in gently, "and I'm sorry, but I need you." Her tone sharpened. "What's going on?" "I'm sending you files, documents, footage, corruption involving city zoning, HOA manipulation, extortion, and a targeted harassment campaign against disabled residents. Is your daughter okay?" I took a breath. Karen tried to cut off her oxygen supply. Rachel didn't speak for 3 seconds. When she did, her voice was low and devastating. "Send me everything. I'll be there in an hour." It was exactly what I needed. Rachel wasn't just a journalist, she was an investigative force. A one-woman wrecking crew who exposed corruption like it was her religion. She had burned mayors, real estate investors, and fake charity boards to the ground with her reporting. If anyone could end Karen, it was Rachel. While waiting for her, I checked the cameras again and froze. Karen was back, standing halfway down my driveway, staring at my house like she owned it. Only this time, she wasn't alone. The zoning official was next to her, and behind them were 2 men I had never seen before, broad-shouldered, wearing black jackets, each standing like bodyguards. This wasn't homeowners association drama anymore. This was intimidation. This was pressure. This was a warning. I stepped outside before they could make the first move. Karen crossed her arms, projecting the confidence of someone who believed victory was guaranteed. "So," she said with fake sweetness, "we need to talk." "No," I replied. "You need to leave." She tilted her head, smirking. "You really think you can scare me with your little complaints?" The zoning official stepped forward. You're interfering with community reorganization. That's a federal matter. I stared at him evenly. Funny because what I have is evidence of fraud, coercion, and conspiracy to force financially vulnerable families out of their homes. His jaw tightened. He wasn't expecting me to know that. Karen scoffed. No one will believe that. You're just a desperate single father pretending to be a hero. I smiled. For the first time, I smiled. Then I guess it'll be interesting, I said quietly when an investigative journalist arrives here in 30 minutes. That wiped Karen's smile straight off her face. You didn't, she snapped. Oh, I did? You don't know who you're dealing with, she hissed. I will make sure you regret this. What are you going to do? I asked. Turn off my daughter's oxygen again? Her face drained of color. The zoning official grabbed her arm quickly. Let's go. But Karen shook him off. No, I'm not done. Her eyes narrowed into razor-thin slits. You think you can embarrass me? Destroy me? I run this neighborhood. You run nothing, I replied. Not after today. Her voice rose, unhinged. I will evict you myself. I will take your house. I will. You will do nothing, I interrupted. My voice wasn't loud. It wasn't aggressive. It was quiet, lethal quiet. The two men behind her took a step forward, but I didn't flinch. If they touched me, they'd be in the hospital within minutes. And they sensed it. Karen, shaking with anger she couldn't control, jabbed a finger toward me. You'll regret the day you moved here. You'll. But a black car pulled up behind them. Rachel, stepping out with her recording equipment. Karen turned slowly, her face draining of its last trace of confidence. Good timing, I told Rachel. She nodded, eyes fierce as she scanned the scene. Is this the woman? Karen actually stuttered. Wait, you can't just... Rachel raised her camera. Tell me, Karen, she began, her voice smooth and deadly. Why is your signature on documents targeting disabled families for removal? Karen froze. The zoning official stepped back. The two bodyguards exchanged worried glances. I watched her unravel. Those were proposals, just drafts, nothing official. Rachel took a step closer. Is that why you turned off a disabled child's oxygen supply? To speed up the process? Karen's knees visibly locked. No, that's fake. He edited. I have the original cloud timestamp. I said, want me to show it to her? Karen's breath hitched. She knew she was cornered. Rachel continued, adjusting her mic. And what about your partnership with the zoning department? Were you planning to illegally condemn these homes for profit? The zoning official, sweating now, muttered under his breath, Karen, I told you this would blow up. Karen spun on him. You told me you had it under control. And you told me you had him under control, he shot back. So they were turning on each other. Good. Neighbors had begun peeking out of their windows. A few stepped outside, phones recording, whispers spreading like wildfire. What's going on? Is that the HOA lady? She did what to his daughter? Oh my God, is that a reporter? She turned off a child's oxygen? Every second, Karen's empire cracked. She saw it, felt it, heard it, and then she broke. She lunged forward, pointing at me and screaming, This is your fault. You ruined everything. No, I said, you ruined yourself. Her face twisted into something wild, unrecognizable, as she screamed at Rachel, at the zoning official, at the neighbors, at the world. This neighborhood was mine. I made the rules. No, Rachel replied evenly. You abused them. The smashing sound of her reputation collapsing echoed louder than her screams. The zoning official, realizing the sinking ship couldn't be saved, backed toward his SUV. I'm leaving, he muttered, and I'm calling my attorney. Karen whirled on him. No, you can't leave me. You said you'd protect me. He got into the SUV with trembling hands. Not anymore. And he drove off. Karen stood frozen in the street, abandoned by her allies, surrounded by recording neighbors, exposed by a journalist, and destroyed by her own actions. She whispered one last thing, barely audible. It's over. I nodded. For you? Yes. As Rachel wrapped up her footage, she said, quietly, this will go live tonight. You just saved everyone in this neighborhood. I looked at my home, at the window where Emily's oxygen tubes ran safely. No, I said, I just saved the one person who means everything to me. Rachel smiled. What happens to Karen now? I exhaled slowly. The law will handle her next. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over yet. Karen always came back for one last strike, and I had to be ready. The night after Rachel exposed Karen felt strangely quiet, not peaceful, not relieved, but quiet in the way storm clouds gather before lightning strikes. I knew Karen. I knew her pride, her obsession with control, her desperate need to be feared. People like her don't disappear. They don't surrender. They plot. They dig deeper. They lash out harder than ever before. Emily slept beside her oxygen machine, the soft rhythmic hum filling the room like a lullaby. I stayed in the hallway outside her door, sitting on the floor with my back against the wall, watching the security feed on my phone. Hour after hour. My nerves were taut steel cables. Karen had already crossed the line of humanity once. There was no telling what she would do once the story aired. And it did air. At 11:03 p.m., Rachel's investigation appeared on the local news. HOA vice president caught targeting disabled families. Caught on camera endangering child. They replayed the oxygen footage. They displayed the partnership documents. They showed interviews with neighbors Karen bullied for years. They even included zoning corruption allegations tied to the official who abandoned her earlier that day. The neighborhood Facebook group exploded. Local residents shared the story nonstop. The HOA received hundreds of emails demanding her immediate removal. Karen's empire burned in real time. But fire never dies quietly. At 2:17 a.m., my security cameras picked up movement. A figure pacing at the edge of the driveway. Barefoot, hair messy, moving like someone unraveling from the inside out. Karen, her face streaked with tears, her clipboard clutched to her chest like a lifeline, her eyes wild as she muttered to herself. She looked broken, but not harmless. I stepped outside calmly, closing the door behind me. The night air was cold, but her rage radiated heat. You ruined me, she whispered, voice trembling with fury. Do you know what you've done? Yes, I said evenly. I stopped you. You think they'll believe you? She snapped. You think the world cares about you and your sick kid? My jaw tightened. Lower your voice. Karen laughed, a hollow, hysterical sound. Why? Afraid she might wake up? Afraid her little machine might stop working? I stepped closer, and she stumbled back, her bravado evaporating. You're done, Karen. Go home. No, she whispered viciously. You took everything from me. Everything. My job, my reputation, my board position. You did this. You did this to yourself, I corrected. She shook her head, violently. If you had just followed the rules. You mean the rules you invented to evict vulnerable families? No, she hissed, stepping forward. I mean the rule that this neighborhood belongs to me. Before I could respond, she pulled something from behind her clipboard. Not a weapon, a brick, and she hurled it straight at my front window. The glass cracked, spiderwebbing into 1,000 shimmering lines. Emily jolted awake inside. I heard her scream through the monitor clipped to my belt. I ran to her instantly, forcing myself not to grab Karen by the throat. Inside, Emily sobbed, clutching her oxygen mask, shaking with fear. It's okay, baby, I whispered, holding her tight. Daddy's here. Daddy's here. Her breath quickened dangerously. I grabbed her inhaler, steadied her mask, and let her breathe until minutes felt like hours and her tiny chest stopped shaking. When she finally calmed, I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and locked her door gently. Then I stepped outside again, and I wasn't calm anymore. Karen stood frozen, finally realizing what she'd done. You threw a brick at my house, I said quietly. Too quietly. Her mouth opened and closed. I didn't, it wasn't you provoked. You attacked my daughter again. She shook her head. No, I didn't hit her. I didn't know the window. You terrified her, I said. And now you're going to face consequences. And oh, she screamed, backing up until she hit the mailbox. You can't call the police. You can't. Watch me. I dialed 911. Her face twisted into panic. Wait, we can fix this. I'll drop the violations, I'll resign, You already lost those. This is about safety now. About my daughter. No. Please, Karen begged, gripping my sleeve. Please, I can't lose everything, please. You already did. When the police arrived, neighbors poured out of their houses, half in pajamas, half recording. Officers took one look at the shattered window, the oxygen tubes inside, the evidence folder I handed them, and Karen's frantic state, and it was over. She fought, cried, screamed that we framed her, called us liars, blamed the HOA, blamed the zoning official, blamed the neighborhood, but no one listened. They put her in handcuffs, and she finally broke. You won't get away with this, she whispered hoarsely as they placed her in the car. I already did, I said. The cruiser drove away, its red and blue lights reflecting off the broken glass. The neighborhood exhaled. That morning, the HOA president emailed the entire community. Effective immediately, Karen Whitmore is removed from all HOA duties. A criminal investigation is underway. All targeted violations are dismissed. A protection policy for disabled residents is being drafted. Neighbors left flowers and cards on my porch for Emily. Some apologized for never standing up to Karen sooner. Some offered help, meals, support. For the first time since moving here, I felt safe. And Emily, she colored pictures, breathing easily, unaware of how close darkness had come to her door. A week later, Rachel visited again to record a follow-up interview. As she walked through the house, she paused at the shelf where Emily kept her stuffed animals. She's strong, Rachel said softly. She gets it from her mom, I replied. Rachel nodded slowly. You know, this story is going nationwide. People need to hear what she survived, what you fought for. I glanced at my daughter playing with crayons, her oxygen gently hissing beside her. I didn't fight for the story, I said. I fought for her. And you won. I smiled. Yeah, we did. That night, after Emily fell asleep, I stepped outside and looked down the street. The air was still, peaceful, quiet. No footsteps stalking the driveway. No clipboard in sight. No threats lurking in the shadows. For the first time in a long time, the neighborhood belonged not to fear, but to the people who lived here. And as I stood there, breathing the cool night air, one truth settled deeply in my chest. You don't need weapons or vengeance to win a war. Sometimes you just need to stand between evil and your child and refuse to move. This was more than justice. It was a promise. No one harms my daughter and walks away. And Karen learned that the hard way. If you felt this story, if it grabbed your heart, tell me in the comments. What city are you watching from? And if you want more stories like this, filled with emotion, suspense, and justice, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you.